we are right between strategic plans. One that was supposed to end at the end of FY20, which is 1 October, and one that was set for 21 and 22. So we're not only doing the financial planning and all the things that have to be done between now and the end of this fiscal year, but also trying to get the board to pivot and start looking ahead, which I think is going to be, the whole governance model here is going to get really critical really fast. You're going to get a lot of help on the near-term stuff and not as much on the far-term stuff. And you're actually going to, for me at least, I've found I actually have to push them hard to stop looking at the immediate crisis right in front of us and help me bring some focus back to the organization more quickly. So like people driving past an accident.
Yeah. Others comments on that? Because that's the essence of why I had this discussion and put this out there to begin with, because that's what I was seeing is like just a myopic focus on what's natural, just solving the current problem in front of us. But, you know, it's not good enough.
Well, I'll jump in here in response to what Rob said. First off, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We had our board meeting.
But now we can't. You keep going in and out.
Okay. We had our board meeting about 10 days ago, and I was very impressed how easily our member companies have bounced between immediate crisis and immediate needs and looking at long-term. And they've actually reached out and volunteered more at this board meeting to evaluate where we're going to be, you know, 3 months from now and 3 years from now and everything in between. So hopefully you guys will get that from your upcoming board meetings as well.
Don.
Yeah, you know, guys, I run a trucking company named BDR Express, so it's an essential business. And, you know, we've gone from, we lost about 40% of our business quickly, but kept all our employees thanks to the government. And we've gone from trying to deal with boredom here to, if you got your finger on the pulse of the economy, things all of a sudden this week just started exploding to where we are now being told that stores are reopening. We've got we're getting additional equipment. We do a lot of retail deliveries, and we're just trying to quickly move from crisis mode to growth mode because my finger on the pulse is things are really starting to percolate out there. And so fortunately, we were able to keep our employees. We're a small company. We have about 50 employees. But you know, Federal Express is one of our clients. My GM was just at a meeting there this morning when they're saying, you can get as much business as you want right now. They're just exploding, probably because of cyber, but you know, it just has just been a quick change in the last week. So if the trucking industry is any kind of gauge of you know, what's to come, we certainly are starting to see an uptick.
That's interesting because if you woke up to the news this morning, you felt like jumping off the roof with the jobs numbers, right? And so you wonder wonder how those two things jive. I guess is what I'm saying. I guess I don't know.
Well, the interesting thing about that, I think, when you look at that and see how Wall Street has reacted to it, is that number one, it didn't go beyond the expectations, and also that Wall Street always looks ahead as to what is optimistic, and you know their pulse is going beyond and talking to obviously CEOs and others in the economy about what's happening. And so Don's story is probably indicative of why you're seeing the reaction of what's going on. And I think for companies like ourselves, our company has been mostly in the data side, and we're now taking some of the work we're doing and trying to figure out how to put it more online and more interactive without being in person. And I think the pivot that a lot of us are having to take is going to be illustrative of, you know, how fast we can move, certainly, and whether on the other side of this, that it really is what people say it's going to be. And Jackie made the point about, you know, people are, you know, being definitive about what the new normal is going to be. And honestly, anybody who says that you're right doesn't know what they're talking about, because we have a lot to go through in order to get to whatever is normal on the other side of this. And so, you know, us trying to figure out what that is so that we can be ready for our customers with solutions that they're saying, yes, bring it on, and we're ready to pay for it. That's what we're struggling with at this point. Positively, it's not a negative struggle. It's a very positive struggle for us. And I'm really been encouraged by my team to think about, all of us collectively, about how we can really respond to this and figure out what are the nuances that we need to address. So again, you know, the signals are out there, and I think that's what we have to respond to.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, I would like to add, you know, I don't think you're going to be able to predict the future yet, but I mean, there's some pretty strong indicators on certain trends. I don't know if anyone heard Dan Schulman from PayPal the other day in the morning, but he said this, for electronic payments, this pushed where they thought they'd be in 5 years to now. And I think that's a pretty safe bet, right? 60% of Americans never want to touch cash again. So, I mean, there are some really strong, you know, he thought we'd get there almost 5 to 10 years from now, but this has pushed it all forward. So I think there are some, you know, some things you can learn. I mean, you know, that are definitely going to be trends here going forward.
Yeah.
He was my first boss of all time, my first job out of college, Dan Schulman. So
Are you serious?
I have a good relationship with him, yeah.
Man, you should have stayed with him. Hey, I'm interested in our bankers on the phone. You have a very interesting perspective in dealing with many small business leaders. Marianne and Liz, what are you guys seeing?
I'll go first, Jack. I mean, we're in Maryland, so we're still locked down, although they opened the golf courses and boating.
Good for your husband.
2 days ago. Well, I actually have mixed emotions. I mean, I think if you're a golfer, it's great, but if you're standing in the golf shop with a lot of other people coming in, but that's a different subject for a different day. So just for everybody else, my husband's a golf pro at a local club. So I would say that we don't see outside of the bank a ton of optimism right now because of where we are in this lockdown mode right now. I would say that we're at least trying to do everything that you've talked about. We're in the process of writing a written return to work plan, dealing with, on the one hand, a lot of people who are just afraid to come back to work. And so balancing the act of saying, we're very concerned and always will be very concerned about your health. That comes first, but let's talk about how we come back to work, not if we come back to work. Because you have people saying, hey, this is fine, but what's it do to the culture? And also as a bank, and Liz will probably agree with me, we have to remind people we're responsible for our customers' health, and that includes their economic health. And if everybody stays home, this economy is never going to get started again. And also we took a very opportunistic and optimistic note, weirdly, on our most recent earnings call. You know, after talking about all the payment modifications we made and the payment protection plan loans that we made and the higher allowances for loan loss reserves we put in place, and talked about how we thought that the positioning we had in the market had been recognized and that we were going to start to see a lot of new business. Now the push up the hill is getting people who know that to say, but what are we going to do to make it happen? Not just to focus on, well, sure, it will happen, the proactive versus reactive. And I think with our customers, what we're trying to do is, since there's not necessarily a lot of built-in optimism, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of concern about what happens when the payment modification period's over, what happens when I've used up all my payment protection money for my payroll and things are still not great. And trying to just one-on-one counsel them. You know, one of the things I think we're pretty good at doing, because we have a really experienced staff, is not just talking about their finances, but some of the things that you talked about, going from respond to recovery for our customers. What can you do to change your business model? We have a customer that is a fresh produce distributor. A number of years ago, they had switched almost totally from grocery stores to restaurants because it was a higher margin business. So you can imagine what happened to them at the end of March. They're flipping back. You know, so working with them on a new business model. And I think bankers can do that. It's not just about the payment and the delinquencies, but we get to see lots of different businesses in different industries. And that gives us an advantage that our clients don't necessarily have in talking to them. So we're trying to do that. But the bad news is, being in Maryland, which is still pretty much locked down, as you know, I don't see the optimism that you see in some other places.
Yeah. Thanks, Marianne. Liz, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. We're a New York Metro bank. We're also in the suburbs of New York City, in the throes of this PPP program and everything else going on. The good news is that we have built a lot of goodwill, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for new clients. But I think Marianne is right on point. We have an opportunity here to be trusted advisors to a lot of our clients, and we have to look for ways to help them get through the next, I would say, 6 to 12 months. This is going to be, it's going to take some time. We at the organization are already talking about returning back to work. And, I've had numerous conversations with members of my team, just putting them kind of on notice, not giving an absolute date, because I don't know who knows this, but the governors of New York and New Jersey, especially New Jersey, he would keep the state shut for, another 2 months if he could. But just kind of keeping people on notice, saying, listen, we do have a responsibility to the economy, right? We need to buy gas. We need to pay tolls. We need to do all those things. We need to support our local businesses. And psychologically, I think it's really good for people. Probably one of the first steps that I would take is to ask for willing volunteers. Let's set up a schedule. Let's start getting people into the office. Even if it's a couple of hours a day, people will feel differently. They already feel like they've been kind of sort of in the war. And, now it's time to say, okay, what are the next steps? But it will be difficult. I wish I could just shut off all the news all the time and tell people to do the same, but unfortunately we can't. But recovery is vital to just for everyone, from an emotional standpoint, psychological, and your wallet. I mean, you have to help people pivot and change and be agile. And Marianne's right. As a banker, you have that responsibility, to everyone, not just to yourselves and your own organization, but also all the clients that you serve.
So the two of you not only have the anxieties at home, the anxieties of your staff, and the anxieties of your employees. I guess you all do in some respects, but
we're all in this together, Jack.
Yeah. I see Rianne shaking her head like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone else want to share their thoughts and ideas on how they're moving?
So I'll jump in, Jack, and I know
Hey, Tom.
Been part of the group much, but for those that don't know, Axiologic, we're a services company. We provide services to the intelligence community in the U.S. government. So this has been crazy, right? And some of the things that I hear kind of people talking about are interesting to me. It's like, when we go back to work, right? So that's an interesting statement that everyone's making. Like, when we go back to work, right? And I kind of think about it and I say, well, we haven't stopped working, right? And we haven't, right? So now it's not when we go back to work. It's just, are we going to change the location of where we work differently for the future? Now, we, as a services firm for the Intel community, we have a very interesting balance, right? So we have people that need or used to need or have needed to work in a government facility. You know, you got to go past like 15 different guards with guns and all that other fun stuff to get to the actual computer terminal that you can use that nobody can access, right? So that part of it, like a lot of that's not going to change. But the segment of work that employees are doing that needs to be done in that environment versus other environments, that's changing. Now, if I turn to my corporate environment, where we've got probably 20-ish people working corporate, people sort of work from home here or there, but now obviously everybody's working from home all the time, and I feel bad saying it, but nothing's changed for us, right? And in fact, some people are really kind of enjoying it because half of my C-suite lives in Annapolis and we're in Fairfax, right? So they're okay with that. So it's kind of an interesting concept, is that, for us, where we thought it was going to be a major deal, it hasn't been. I feel bad because we're not inflicted by the employment numbers that kind of everyone else is seeing, and we're doing critical things that need to continue. So that's great. The thing that I would be curious to see is, like, when we talk about the double-digit unemployment that we're hitting now, is kind of what are the real kind of market sectors that it is hitting, and what will we see as a result of that, 12 months from now, what businesses is it going to impact? Because we all know what it's doing immediately today, but I look at it going, well, it's not affecting me today, but it will affect me at some point in the future. So I don't know if any of that was worthwhile, but that's my.
Yeah. Well, I was on a call this morning with a guy from Merrill Lynch. They do a lot of work with Blackstone, so he's been on a bunch of Blackstone calls, and I guess the whole concept was like, there's how many millions of people are at 25 million, something like that. Were the numbers this morning? Even if you account for the fact that a few of these big segments aren't going to come back, you still have a lot of people that are out, and the recovery, how long did the last recovery take, like, to get to 200,000 jobs a month? It took a long time for us. I don't know what the numbers are, but it took a long time for us to get there. So do you remember that conversation, David? You were on that too.
Yeah, I do. If I understand it, you said, it took 10 years to dig out of 2009 at 200,000 or so jobs a month. And we lost all of that in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that was just based on a single sector of the economy taking a hit that caused the Great Recession. Here, where you have such a broad-based shutdown of the entire economy, how fast can we get to adding 200,000 jobs a month for 10 years when there's so much purchasing power out of the economy now?
Yeah, because bottom line is, you might not be hit now, but it seems like people are going to be hit at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the consensus was that, we're in this bubble right now as the relief money is in play, but by midsummer that will have worked its way through, and that's when the real impact will start to really show.
Yeah. That makes sense to folks. Certainly some logic to it.
I'd really be interested in Mary Ann's thoughts on that.
On which piece of that?
The last piece with the fact that the PPP money will be running out, and then the real impact will.
Well, that's kind of what I was alluding to on the what happens after payment modifications and what happens after PPP, and the simplistic answer is what happens is a lot of what I'll call hand-to-hand combat, which is just working with each borrower in terms of what can they do to change the model? What can they do to cut back on expenses? But I don't want to characterize what the government's done as kicking the can down the road, because I think I've said in this forum before, I actually think the government, while the execution of some of these things was abysmal, the intentions were good and the response time was good. but all we've done is kick the can down the road with payment modifications and with PPP. They're, you know, they might be able to fix some things with PPP in terms of the forgiveness process. You know, don't make people hire somebody right now. You know, a restaurant in Maryland that's not even allowed to open except for takeout. Your employees are actually better off right now with the higher unemployment benefits. So save the money until you can open. But we're not sure, maybe Liz has some insight on this. We're not really sure how to interpret the forgiveness rules. So if they can extend it, if they can let some people use it for some different things like rent, that's going to be helpful. But all you're doing is pushing it down the road. You know, if somebody's problems are driven by a lack of revenue, and that's what all these problems are, they're not driven by bloated staffs or, you know, dysfunctional government. I mean, there are people like private universities where maybe their business model has changed forever. I'm on a private university board. I mean, it makes me feel much better to be a banker after I come out of those board meetings. Our crisis isn't existential. It's but this is just a revenue problem. And other than putting revenue in, nothing fixes it easily. So, but all we can do is, I mean, look, we can lobby, you know, I'm sure Connect One's doing that too. We're lobbying about the interpretation on some of the forgiveness. We're going to make the payment modifications as long as we can. So if they were 90 days, you'll stretch them out to 180 days. You're allowed to do that by some of the regulatory changes. I'll tell you what my fear is, and I you know, this is not leader-like, this is a fear, not a solution. I come back to the only solution is hand-to-hand combat, one-on-one discussions. But what terrifies me is that we come out of this and then we go right back into it again in the winter. And if we go back into it in the winter in a modified format, okay, we're all stronger. We've got muscle memory, right? We've built this system where we can go in and out of work. But if it's a shutdown again, they can't do PPP again.
No.
Yeah.
So I don't have any like super optimistic news other than, you know, you've got to work with all your advisors and try to navigate a different path.
Well, let me take a little different path. I didn't remind everybody, I represent the finance companies, the auto finance world, and personal loans, credit cards, and mortgage. I like the sense that Don gave earlier that this is, he's really viewing this as an opportunity for growth. And Don, I think that's right on the money. The finance company executives that I'm talking to are around the country. Things are not great, but they really aren't as bad as a lot of them were expecting. If you've got, you know, folks in the vehicle finance industry that in April were doing 60% of business, we were expecting to be down by as much as 80 or 85% in April. Performance on loans, people are using their stimulus checks to make their payments, to pay down their debt. They learned from 2008 and 2009 where everybody was overextended. You know, maybe I'm being Pollyannish, but I feel a lot better this week than I did 2 weeks ago about the prospects. I'm not unrealistic. I do agree with David and Jack in terms of, you know, replacing 200,000 jobs a month is going to take a while. But I still think that the American psyche is still pretty strong. You know, we were, you know, popping right along economically, you know, just a few short weeks ago. And with the summer months coming on, I know I just got off the phone with somebody down in South Carolina. They're already back in restaurants and very excited about that. So, you know, I know we're shut down here in Maryland, Virginia, but a lot of the other states, I think, we're going to see a lot of progress. It'll be measured, but from where we've been over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So, want everybody to go out on a good note.
Yeah. Well. Given that I have the right of ending the meeting, I'm going to choose to end on that note. And we could debate back and forth. I will leave you with this. I was on I listened to a way too theoretical podcast yesterday that was sent to me by my partner on polarity thinking. And it got me, and I'm not a good polarity thinker, which just means two different perspectives. There can be something right in both of them. It's not it's not one's wrong and one's right. And I think that's, so I would, encourage you all to tap into your polarity thinking as you're going through this hard work that you're going through. And I read another great article in the Wall Street Journal this morning, an op-ed piece on, the American psyche and what, we're made for crap like this. So it sucks, but it's, hopefully we have the wherewithal to get through it. So I appreciate you all showing up and participating like you do every time we do this. I'll wait another few weeks, probably do another one. And I hope you show up then too. I hope you get something out of it. And I really do appreciate the interaction and getting to know you guys and getting to know each other. I look forward to it myself, but I'm kind of a junkie at this kind of stuff. So I appreciate you participating like you do. And good luck to all of you. And know that I'm here as a voice to call me anytime to vent. There's a few of you on the phone that do. So
thanks for pulling this together, Jack.
Yeah.
Thank you,
for giving us the forum. Thank you.
Take care.
Hang in there.
Bye-bye.